All right, hello, good afternoon, and welcome to the last but certainly not the least session in our TrendSoft user group event. Again, my name is Bobby Haggard, and I'm one of the consultants here at TrendSoft. Let's first make sure everyone is logged into the correct session. If you have just tuned in, this is What's New in Dynamics 365 Business Central and Nav. So on our call today, we will discuss the latest features of Business Central associated with the April 1 release. Microsoft has continued their cadence of releasing major updates, including new features, capabilities, and functionality twice a year in April and October. We'll also discuss on-premise Nav versus Dynamics 365 Business Central, and if it's time for you to migrate, and much, much more during our presentation. Now, a little bit of housekeeping notes before we jump in. We went ahead and muted all the phone lines and the microphones to try to keep down on some of that background noise. If you have a question, just like in the other sessions, if you have a question, which we absolutely want you to ask, please drop that into the Q&A. My coworkers, Callie Wagner and Tara Cox, are monitoring the Q&A sections, and we'll be happy to address those at the end of the presentation. Secondly, if you would like the presentation slides or the video recording once they are available, just drop your email into the Q&A. We'll know exactly what that means, and we'll be sure and get that to you as they become available. Finally, at the conclusion of this session, you will receive an evaluation form. If you fill out that evaluation form by the end of the day on Friday, you'll be entered into the drawing for a couple of giveaways that we've entered, which we'll be drawing for next week. All right, let's jump in. And first, let's drop a quick poll out here and see what you guys think. So I'm going to launch this poll, and it's all about, what is stopping you guys? What is stopping your organization from fully moving into the cloud? Some people say, hey, we're already on Business Central in the cloud, not an issue for us. Others say, hey, there's time requirements of a migration, or there's migration costs that have to be factored in, or management ownership prefers or requires us to stay on premise, or other, considerations. So just trying to get a little feedback here to understand, there's oftentimes many different reasons, but just kind of trying to understand what some of those drivers are. And what's nice is out here, what we're seeing is that, over half of what we're already seeing today, half of our clients are already on Business Central who have attended today. So that's great. And we're glad that you're already in the cloud, and hopefully you're seeing those benefits. We see all others saying, ownership management prefers the on-premise setup. Totally understand that as well. And Business Central will allow you to continue to stay on-premise as needed as well. All right, let's end this poll, and we will jump right into our presentation here. All right, so as you have seen with the user group sign up when you registered, there were several other sessions. If you didn't have a chance to register for the other ones, and you may have missed them, don't worry, please visit our website, trendsoft.com. I'm sure we will have those posted as they become available. So if you miss any of the previous ones around Power BI or Trend Forms, just reach out to us and we'll be happy to send those slides and the recordings to you. All right, our speaker is going to be Matt Wood for the third time. He's going to be presenting to us about Dynamics 365 Business Central. As most of you know, Matt is our Dynamics project manager and team lead. Been with us about 10 years, lots of great experience with Dynamics Nav, Business Central, GP, and Power BI. So at this time, I'm going to turn things over to Matt. So Matt, take it away.
All right, everybody, thanks for joining me today on this session in our user group. This will be the Dynamics Business Central 2021 Wave 1 release. So what we're going to do is look at some features in the new version that is about to come out here for Business Central. My name is Matt Wood. I am the Dynamics team lead here at TrendSoft. I've been with TrendSoft going on about 10 years now, so we will jump right in here and we'll start to take a look at some of these new features. Now this is planned to be released in Q2, so anytime now, really. So we are in Q2, so anytime here in the next few weeks, we should start to see these be applied to your tenants out there. All right, so let's jump in here. All right, so what we're going to do is, as I said, we're going to look at new features. I've provided a link here in our slide deck, so we will send these out once we're done with today's meeting, and you can then click on this and it'll take you directly to that website. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll click here and go out here to the website. And we'll see this takes us directly to the Dynamics 365, what's new and planned document. And you can tell it tells us from April 21 through September 2021 is where we'll expect to see some of these releases. If you ever want to go back and look at previous waves release, you can also click here. We covered that in our TrendCon event back in the October timeframe. So the way Microsoft organizes this page is they look at different categories. So we have admin, application, Microsoft 365, country and regional. So this one I'm not going to talk about much during the presentation, but you can see they are continually releasing different areas of the world where the Business Central is now available. Main focus here, India is a big one for them as that's obviously a large user base. Power Platform, so we'll talk about that. Modern Client, so what have they done to the client to enhance it? The development tool, again, we're not going to focus much on that in this particular session, but they are providing additional changes. So if we have any developers out there, you can look here and see what they're doing there. As well as onboarding and seamless service. So we'll take a look at some of these, and I'll be coming back and forth to this page as we go through. So let's head back over here to our presentation. So again, we got admin, applications where we're going to be spending most of our time, and then we'll look at a few of these other options as well. Something else to keep in mind as we're going through this, I'm going to get in BC a little, but for the most part, these have not been released out to the tenants yet. So we are going to also be looking at a little bit more high level of what the changes are going to do, and then I'll show you some screenshots where applicable. All right, so let's jump in, and we'll start with the administration highlights. So first thing, if you're using on-prem, you will know that when you look at the system requirements, you typically will see, all right, I can only run this on certain SQL Server versions and certain operating systems, so certain versions of Windows Server. They are now not requiring that you have a certain version of SQL Server or operating system. All the requirements going to be going forward with this new Wave 1 2021 release is that the SQL compatibility level is 130, 140, or 150. So that's a nice thing to know. So if you're running an old server, you can still potentially run the new version on that version as long as your compatibility level on SQL is one of these three. Also, so data export is now more reliable for large databases. So where this comes into play typically is if I'm trying to send off a database to Microsoft for support. If you happen to have a large database, lots of companies, lots of data, then we sometimes see that it times out when we're trying to do that. They've basically reallocated some resources out there in the Azure world so that you're going to be able to do a data export of large databases. This third bullet point really is more for partners, but it is nice. So what they've done is improve the delegated admin feature. And what they've allowed us, they've just given us a little bit more power in there, or not power, but more ability to do some things. So one is we are now able to set up job queues. So what job queues do is allow us to run automated tasks. Before we would have had to work directly with you, have you do all the setup because our license type would not allow it. We'll be able to do that now. And then also, most of you that are on the premium license have got emails from us saying, hey, can you switch this to a premium license for us from Essential? We will be able to do that now as partners. The last one here that I've got on admin that I'm highlighting is the reassigning an environment from one organization to another. So where this comes into play is if you're doing a merger or you're acquiring someone and they happen to also be running Business Central. Before, there really was no way to say, okay, I'm going to move that environment into mine. But now we are going to be able to do that. So that's a nice feature. If you're out there looking to acquire or merge, you know that you have the ability to bring that into your environment if needed. All right, as I said before, so application highlights, this is where we're going to spend most of our time. This is probably what you're most interested in. All right, so the first one, and there's a lot. So if you go out there and look, if I come back out to here, you can see there are a lot of different. Come up here to my application. There's a lot of changes here. I've highlighted ones I think you guys will find the most noteworthy. But if you have additional, we want to look into these other ones, you absolutely can by just clicking here and it'll take you into that. So let's look at the first one I had listed there in my PowerPoint, which is the automatic creation of lot and serial number cards. So we'll come in here and I'm just opening this up because I want to show you these screenshots. But what this is, so when I'm setting up lots or serials, I can set a number, obviously, but you may not know there's also what's called an information card. And what that allows me to do is enter additional information regarding that lot, for example. So maybe I want to put in a note about that particular lot that maybe we need to give this one a little more scrutiny, for example. The other thing we can do is set blocks on lots. So maybe I produce something and we find out that that lot is faulty and we want to block it so it can no longer be used. This will give us the ability to do that. But by default now, when I create a lot, I have to go up and click a button to create that information card. That will no longer be the case. So I can now turn on, you can see here in my screenshots, that you can turn on that to automatically happen here in my setup. And then at each individual lot, I can tell it create that automatically. So that's what that one will do for us. Let me go back into my presentation. All right, the next one is BankRec Improvement. So this one's pretty cool. In the past, you may know that if you posted a BankRec and then you realize that you had an issue. So I've posted it and then, oh, I forgot to clear something or I made an adjustment that was wrong. There really wasn't a way to go back and fix that. You basically were stuck with a bad posted BankRec. This new improvement will allow you to actually cancel a BankRec, so pretty much void it and then redo it. And also it gives you the ability, there's a new button on the page that allows you to create, basically once you delete one, you can bring that same one back up and it'll all be filled out for you. So I'm going to show you that real quick here. Over here. So I'm going to go to BankRec. I'll click on that. And if I come up here to my actions, you can see I have a change statement number. So when I've created that and I want to correct a mistake, but use that same statement number I've already basically undone, I can use that button and change that statement number. So now I can just make my fixes and then repost it again. The other thing is there's a new report from my posted BankRec. So if let's go to bank accounts here. And if I come into checking, and I go to reports, or actually, sorry, I gotta go to statements here, posted reconciliations. Up here under my report, I have a new report I can run to see the details of that. So that's also there for us. All right, back to our PowerPoint here. All right, bin codes and jobs, that's another one that we've got. So this one allows us to set a bin code on a job. So if I'm using items in my jobs, as it stands today, I can't set a bin code that I want to pull those items from that I'm going to use on that planning line. This will give me the ability to do that now. So there are going to be new fields on the planning line page. You have to use personalization to bring them up, but you can add them now. So you can set a bin that you want those particular items to come from for your jobs. Next one on the list is changes in synchronization between contact and customer or vendor. So what this one allows me to do is set a sync that now, before what I would do is I'd set up a contact that was a company, and then I would set up underneath of that different contacts against that company type. But now I don't have to do that. There's going to be a new button that I'm going to be able to just link it directly to a contact. So I'm no longer going to need that type field. So if I show you inside of here, and we come to our contacts. So before, I had this type company or type person. That's going to kind of go away now, because what I'm going to do is set up a contact that's going to be the overall company, and then I'm going to link contacts against that. So there's going to be an action here. I'll select that and I'll link it to the contact that it needs to be linked to. All right. Next one is define lot sizes for various stages of production. So this one's pretty simple to understand, but on my routings now, I will be able to tell it when I run this route step, I expect it to be 10, an output of 10 for that lot. And what that's going to do is allow me then to do planning better, because I'm going to know when I run this, I'm going to create 10 and it's going to take this long based off my runtime. So that's all that is just a new field on my routing lines that allow me to select the lot size for each of those route steps. Next one, this one's pretty exciting. So this is dimension corrections. So you've heard me say this many times if you've worked with me. Once I post something in BC, it's pretty much done. I can't do anything to fix it. The only way to fix it is to create a journal entry to reverse that out and then correct it. Then create another journal entry to make the correction. So what they're allowing us to do now is actually set dimension corrections from the journal ledger entry page. So what they've done is they're gonna add a button on the general ledger entry screen, and it's going to be called correct dimensions. And what that's going to allow me to do is go to a particular journal entry, bring it up, either edit the dimensions that I posted it to. So if I posted them incorrectly and I need to make a change, I can edit them. If I forgot to put them on there, I can add dimensions to them, or I can remove dimensions. So really anything that's in the GL that's posted. Now I can't change the GL account, but I can update those dimensions. Where we see this a lot, like you first start out and you realize you've got new people doing work. You got a new user who doesn't realize that they need to set dimensions and they forget, or they set the wrong ones. There's no good way to fix those, but now we do have a way to fix those. So we're going to be able to correct those going forward. Now this is at the GL entry level. So anytime I go post that, I can then come in and make that correction. All right, next one on the list is the new inventory documents. So what this does, and we'll look at this in a second, but what this is going to allow us to do is create a receipt or a shipment that isn't really based off a PO or a sales order. So before, you would know if I was going to do a warehouse receipt, that had to be coming from a PO. That was really the only way to do it, or a transfer. And that was the only way that I could create those documents. The other way, if I needed to make a fix, is I would do an item journal. But there's really no document behind that. I can't print it and see paperwork behind that. So what this is going to allow me to now do is actually create a document. So let's go into here, and let's go down here under application. And you can see right here. So we have a new document that we did not have before. This is called an inventory receipt. We also have the same thing on the shipment side. But you can see it's similar to what I would expect to see like on a warehouse receipt, where I actually have a document that I'm going to print off and then use that either to do scanning, or I'm going to do something with it, or I just need to give it to the back office to show that I've done something here. So that's what this is. So you can see it's just got a header and a line, just like we would expect. We have dimensions we can set, but we're going to have a document. We enter that in. We can print it, so we can actually have a document related to this. And it could be, there might be multiple reasons. Maybe I just had some inventory come in, I didn't have a PO for it, or I just need to make an adjustment, but I want some documentation behind that. I can do that. Same thing on the shipment side. Maybe I've got material that's faulty that I'm just going to get rid of. So I can then create a shipment to basically scrap those out of the system, and I'll have a document that I have a paper trail behind. And you can see what it does is it's going to create an inventory receipt, and then a posted inventory receipt, and then inventory shipment, and a posted inventory shipment. So just like I would expect when I've got a sales order or a purchase order. Same thing, but I have a document now without actually having a PO or a sales order. All right. All right, another pretty exciting one, and this one is the additional control for default dimensions. So this one's, let me actually just open up the website here so we can look at that. And we're going to come into this one here. All right, so we're all familiar with the default dimensions page. And before, we had 3 columns: dimension code, dimension value code, and value posting. And if we remember, we can say, okay, for my area, my default dimension in this case would be 30, and it's a code mandatory. So meaning if I'm coding to this particular customer, in this case, customer 10,000, I am going to default dimension 30, and it's code mandatory. So I can pick a different area, but I have to have an area. But I can't tell it, I'm allowed to use 30, 31, 32, 33, 34. That's all I can do is just tell it it's code mandatory. And I can default one, but anybody could change that and it would allow it to post. What they're changing is they've added a new column called allowed values filter. And what that's going to do is say, okay, for my customer 10,000, and again, this default dimensions is for any master record, accounts, vendors, items, all of those. But for this particular customer 10,000, for dimension code area, I'm going to default it to 30, and I'm going to tell it, yeah, it's code mandatory, so I have to post with a area dimension code. But I'm also going to tell it, these are the ones that are allowed to be used. So anything between 30 and 40, I'm allowing. But if they posted 1 to 29, that's not allowed. That's going to error. Before, we had no way to do that without doing a modification, which some of you may have. We'd actually done a mod for this, but now it's going to be native within the system, no modification needed. And you can set those up. So now we have a lot more control over what's allowed to be used and what's not. So this one's pretty cool. I think everybody's going to be able to use this. Before we were able to do dimension combinations. So we were able to say, area code 30 was allowed to be used with customer group small, but we had no way to do it against the master records. So now we'll be able to do that. All right, a few more on our application. Simplified bank statement file import. So really all this one is they've made it easier to do a bank statement file import. So what that is when I'm on my BankRec, right now I have the ability to take a file, and it has to be in a certain format, and import that in, and it will clear all the checks, for example, that are in that file automatically without me having to do anything. What this is going to allow me to do is just make it easier. So most of the banks out there, you can go out to your mobile banking site or your web-based banking site. You can pull up your bank statement, and you can export that out typically to like a CSV or something, a text file, something like that. And then that file you can use that in Excel or whatever you need to do. So what this is allowing us to do is basically take any file that comes out that's in CSV. We'll be able to map it to that file that comes from the bank, and then that will create the import that we then import and clear all your checks. We won't be in a box of what BC says the file has to look like. We'll be able to map that however we want. So it's going to open a lot more banks up to this file import. Next one on here is the variant code on production orders. So this one simply is we can add a variant code to the header of a production order. So right now we don't have that ability to say we're producing item ABC, but it's variant code yellow, for example. we do have that in this new version. So we're going to be able to say we want to produce 10 of ABC yellow and 10 of ABC blue, for example, on 2 separate production orders, and then drive that from that BOM as well, based on which variant code we chose. All right, last one is they have made some price list adjustments. And again, this is the last one I'm going to show today. There is more out there if you want to take a look. So on our price list, and I'm going to show this one inside the system here. Let's pop over here to BC. And I want to show you something before I even get into this one. So I'm going to go to feature management. So I searched feature management, and some of you may not know what this is. But what this is there actually are features that are not in the general release yet, but you are able to turn them on. So we talked about this a little bit last time, but I want to refresh your memory here. So here are all the features that are currently not in the base application. So you can see it's going to tell us, this one, for example, is coming out in version 18, which is Q2 2021. But it's not in the version I have yet. But I can enable it, so I can turn this on for users if I want to. So I have all these options here. The one I'm going to look at right now is this one. If you remember, though, last time on our TrendCon webinar, we looked at enhanced email capabilities, which will come out at the end of this year. This write longer item references, and you can see I have those turned on. Now, this one right here is the one I'm going to show you now, the new sales pricing experience. And I simply just turn that on. Now, this one, you notice, isn't even coming out technically until Q2 2022, according to this, although they may have pushed that a little bit earlier. And I can see that I've completed the data update. So some of them, you can see where it says data update versus enabled. Some of them, I'm just turning them on and they become enabled. Some of them actually are moving data to different tables. So as soon as I turn them on, I'm pretty much locked into using the new feature. For example, the write longer item references is that same way, because what happens is it actually is using a new table for that. So it's going to move all the data that's in the current table to the new table. So with that being said, I've enabled this new sales pricing experience. And what that has allowed me to do is have a new feature called price list. And you can see I have sales price list, purchase price list, sales job price list, a couple additional ones here. You can see there's 5 of them. But I'll go into the sales price list in this example. And you can see I've got now a list of price lists that I'm turning on and off. And I'll just do a new one here. And we have a code. And we'll just call this test. And I'm going to have the ability to give a little bit more detail than I used to have in my price list. So who does this apply to? Is it all customers? Is it a single customer, price group, whoever that may be, a campaign that I'm running, certain contacts get it? I can do that. And then I also have a status, which I did not have before. So I can have a draft, I can have active, and I can have inactive. So if it's in draft status, basically I'm not using it yet. If it's active, obviously I'm using it. And then I can set starting and end dates on these price lists. So I can tell it, this one's starting in April, it's ending in June. Let's say I'm running a Q2 promotion where I want prices to be different. So I can set all that up. And then I can come down here and say, all right, I got an item, and that item is going to be this item, my coffee beans, and I'm going to be selling them at a different price for this particular price list. So that is what these new price lists give us. The main thing about it is they've added this status where I can say draft, active, and it's in the header level. Before everything was kind of a line level. All right. So that's our application highlights. So that's inside of BC. Those are the main things that I think are really interesting. As I said before, there's multiple other things out there that you can take a look at as well that are going to be coming out in this next release. All right, a few more slides we'll run through here. better with Microsoft 365 highlights. So if I'm using Dynamics BC 365 in the cloud, I have a lot of integrations available to me. And these are some of the ones that they've added in this coming up Wave 1 2021 release. So the first one, pretty exciting one here, support cloud printing using Microsoft Universal Print. So I've talked to some of you about this before, but in the cloud version, printing becomes a challenge, especially if I'm trying to print certain reports to certain printers, or I'm trying to print from home to the office, or I'm in the back office and I want something to print out on the floor. Certain things like that. It's been hard to do because the only real way to do it is to select the printer at the time of the report. And depending where I am, maybe I can do that, maybe I can't. But what this service is going to allow us to do is we're going to be able to now connect BC up to this Microsoft Universal Print service that comes with 365, Microsoft 365. And then I'm going to be able to set that in my printer selections. So if I jump over here to BC, and I'm going to go into printer selections, which we haven't really used much of in the cloud-based version because we really aren't able to, just because of the way that the printing works. But if I were to hit new, and you can see I can select this, and some of you on-prem users are going to be familiar with this, but some of you hosted ones won't. I can tell it, okay, for this particular user, so let's just pick Mwood, for example. And then we would pick the report. So I'm just going to pick a random one here. Let's just say I'm going to pick document entries. Doesn't really matter. And then I'm going to have a printer name here. Now, right now, without the Microsoft Universal Print, I only have this email printer, which basically just sends a print job to an email address. So if I'm actually trying to print something, from the back office to the floor, that doesn't do me much good because all it's going to do is email it to somebody. With the Microsoft Universal Print, I'm going to now be able to set up that service and have my printers listed here and tell it I want it to go to this printer out on the floor. So it really gives us a lot more rich functionality with printing that we have not had in the past. So that's pretty exciting to see that come down the pipe for us here. And as that comes available, feel free to reach out to us and we'll help you get it set up so that we can start doing things like that. All right, next one on our list is Word Merge in Business Central. All right, so what this one's going to be used for is, let's say I'm sending out, I have a mailing list. So, every quarter, maybe I send out a newsletter, or maybe I send out a promotion. Maybe it's Black Friday, I'm sending out a promotion, and I want it to go out to my mailing list. Before, I could set up, here's the customers I want it to send to, but then I still have a lot of legwork on the back end to set those mailing lists up to get them out. What this allows me to do now is actually use the mail merge functionality in Word, and then I can connect that up to Business Central and tell it, this field is now this field in Business Central, and it'll just mail merge through all those documents and create them for me. So just a real efficient way to get your mailing lists out if you're doing marketing or whatever it may be, where you want to send a nice document in Word, but fill in data based off Business Central data from customers, vendors, whatever it may be. All right, Teams integration. So this one, we saw a little bit of this last time, but they keep adding to it. So in Teams now, I can download an app that's a Business Central app, and then have that talk to my Business Central tenant. So if I wanted to look up contacts, customers, vendors within Teams, and then share those with other team members, I can do that. I can share documents right there inside of Teams. So I'm not having to go back and forth between the two products. I can kind of do it all in Teams if I need to. And then we've also got the editing in Excel more reliably. So really there's not much to talk about here except they just improved it. If you've used that before, sometimes it's a little bit clunky. They've made some improvements to that so it works more reliably, and no real functionality added, just kind of back end plumbing that's made that work better. All right, then we got some Power Platform highlights that we'll talk about here. So if you're using D365 Sales and you also have BC, a new ability to sync item availability. So, what do I have on hand in BC, and be able to show that in 365 sales. So if my sales team's out on the road, they can bring up their sales and from their D365 sales and have that item availability out there readily available for them to see that. And then also Power BI and BC API. So right now, the way that the Power BI works with BC is I use web services typically to connect to Power BI. So if I'm out here in BC and I go to web services, I've got my list of web services here once it loads. Here they are. And then typically the way we do this is we're using an object type of page to create these. So basically if I have a page within the system, I can pull that in my web services, and then I can go out to Power BI and I can connect to that URL, which is good, and it works in the most cases. That works great. But we did not have the ability to connect to an API. An API is very similar to a web service, but it gives us a little more power to do some filtering on the front end, and it's really going to help with performance on my Power BI. So I don't have to do my Power Queries as much. I can do that through an API first, and then come back and connect that to Power BI. So that's what that's going to give us the ability to do, which is nice, that we have not had in the past. All right, so then some modern client highlights. So just some changes they've made to the modern client. Usability enhancements. So really the only thing of note that I saw here was that they gave us the ability to, on non-editable fields in a list. Now this is already available. So you can see like location, phone number here. I can click on that and it's going to try to do something with it. This is a better example. Southwest, I'm able to open that location card up right from inside of that list. What they've added to this is additional functionality inside of card pages. So anything that's uneditable inside of a card page, if I were to turn off editing, you can notice all these I can click on now, whereas before that may not have been there for me. So that's one thing that they pointed out. But in general, they've just made some changes to the modern climate. You may not notice it just by looking at it, but just to help with performance and whatnot. Also, we've got cloud printing on the mobile app. So similar to what I was talking about with that universal print that they've added, they've also given us the ability to do some printing from mobile app, where we may in the past been able to open our mobile app, see data, but we weren't able to print reports to a printer from that. We will be able to do that in this new release if we have the Microsoft Universal Print, and even in that email printing where we can print reports and email them directly from the mobile app. And then again, printer related. So in the printer selection, typically if I have printer selection set up, there is no way to then tell it as I print which printer I want it to go to. This will be a new feature that's added in the new version, where even if I have printer selection set up, I'll still have the ability to change that assigned printer if I need to in certain cases. All right, last one. Just some other highlights. Really, there's only one that I wanted to point out. There's some other stuff there that you can see, but if you're on BC on-prem, currently you pretty much have to be up to the newest version on the on-prem to get up to the hosted version to get into the new version. They have now added support to migrate from further back. So from versions BC on-prem versions 14 and up, you'll be able to go to this new version of BC. So if you're looking to switch from on-prem to the cloud version, as long as you're on BC version 14, you'll be able to make that jump without having to do an intermediate step. So if you're looking to do that, reach out to us. We'll be happy to help out with that. And that is the main highlights that we wanted to look at here for the new version coming out. Like I said, Q2. So we'll probably start seeing those get released in the next couple of weeks, if not sooner. and all the way through September as those kind of roll out to the different tenants. If you have questions on any of the new features once you get that new version, feel free to reach out to us. We'll be happy to help. And then if you have any questions now, we'll be able to take those as well. But that is hopefully some good stuff that you can see. I see, the dimension change is really good changes that they've made to help with that. And then the printers are going to be a really big deal to give us a lot of functionality that we didn't currently have on the current system. All right, so thanks for everybody for listening in, and we'll be happy to take some questions. Thank you.
All right. Well, definitely, Matt, appreciate that overview of the latest features and releases of Business Central. Definitely helpful to be able to see that come through. We now are going to open it up for a couple of questions here. So if you have a question, definitely drop that into the Q&A. Our team is monitoring those questions. If you'd like a copy of the presentation or the recording once that's available, please just drop your email and we'll be sure to get that sent your way. So Matt is on with us again. Matt, how are you?
Good.
Good. All right. A couple of questions as we wait to see if any other questions come in. And a couple of these are just kind of low hanging that we often hear from different clients. So with Business Central, we know that there's a couple different license types: Essential and Premium and Team Member. Within Business Central, is it difficult to switch license types from Essential to Premium or vice versa?
No, it's really easy. So it's just a matter of we go out to a office portal and then we can just change those licenses. So it can be done very quickly without much trouble.
Okay, perfect. And those licenses can be added at any time, added or removed at any time, right? A client doesn't have to wait until end of the month, first of the month, anything like that.
Yep, that's right.
Perfect. All right, so if you have a question, definitely drop that into the Q&A. We are monitoring that as well. And then, so Matt, one other question that clients often ask us is, can you list a couple of differences between Business Central in the cloud versus Nav on-premise, and kind of walk through that a little bit?
Yeah, so I think one major difference, and depending on which version of the on-prem you're on, is the BC in the cloud is all web-based only. Now, once you get to a certain version, I think it's like BC 16 or 17, everything's web-based, but that's one major difference. Another big one is BC hosted, you get the updates automatically. So as soon as they come from Microsoft, they're going to apply those for you. Versus an on-prem, that's not going to happen. It's going to have to be done typically by us. We're going to have to apply the update and then update you. So that's the major differences, really. Other than that, the base functionality is exactly the same. It's just how you access it, and then when you get those updates.
Yeah, and one thing that a lot of people question, right? It's the same code base between Nav and Business Central, right?
Yep, same exact. So if you actually go look at the actual code, it's the same exact code. Now it is different in the way that it's organized versus the BC hosted versus the on-prem, but yes.
Perfect. All right, well, Matt, I don't see any other questions here in the Q&A, so we'll just jump on to next steps. If you do have a question, following the viewing of this recording or this webinar, definitely reach out to one of your TrendSoft team members, myself, Tara, Matt, or any of our other technical resources. We'll be happy to get those answers for you. So a little bit of homework here, next steps for those of you in attendance. First, be sure to complete that session evaluation once that comes out. Be sure to get that turned in before the end of the day on Friday. That'll get you entered into our drawing for giveaways that we'll be doing next week. Secondly, for those of you that do have questions, support needs as they come up, as I mentioned, please reach out to us. Our technical team is ready and happy to engage to help you guys achieve some of that better automation, better efficiency, etc. Next up, give us a follow or a like on any of the social media platforms. We're on Twitter at trendsoft.com, on Facebook, on LinkedIn. Definitely just give us a follow or a like. We're often posting news, updates, release information about webinars, etc. out there. So keep in contact with us there. Finally, be sure to visit our website, trendsoft.com, and check our blog. We are often posting new content, new feedback, new information that we're sharing out there on a regular basis. So definitely check that out as needed. And with that, we will certainly say thank you for attending today's Dynamics 365 Business Central session. Thank you to all of those who have attended all of the various sessions of our TrendSoft user event. It was definitely a great event for us. Certainly appreciate everyone. On behalf of the entire TrendSoft team, we would like to say thank you to each of our clients in attendance for taking time out of your busy days to participate in this event. And we look forward to continuing to partner with you and your team into the future. Thanks. Have a great day.